special meeting to order August 22nd at 7 o'clock. Interview for the select board vacancies.
All right, so thank you everyone for coming today. We really appreciate it. Before we get going, we want to kind of lay out how tonight's going to go. But first, I want to thank the 6 applicants who applied to be on this vacancy. It's really great to see so much civic engagement from the community. People wanting to be part of the board and helping Woodstock achieve more things in the future. So I just want to thank everyone ahead of time for making the time and the effort to be here tonight. We really appreciate it. With 6 applicants, we want this process to be as transparent and equal as possible. So over the last 2 weeks, the board has worked together to come up with a list of questions that we want to ask the applicants. So everyone has the same questions, therefore they can be judged on the same merits. With that said, there might be members of the public here who want to make a comment about this search beforehand. So we do want to open it up for about a minute each. If anyone from the public wants to make a statement regarding the next select board member or what they like to see in the next select board member or anything else. So we'll allow 1 minute per person. If anyone wants to come speak either online or in person, you have the opportunity now. If there's anyone interested in making any comments. I'm seeing none online, none in person. All right, so if we're ready, we can start the process. All right, so Butch Sutherland had to withdraw due to some health issues. So first up is Richard. You're welcome. And you want to state your full name for the record? Sure.
Richard Kozlowski.
All right. So I will be handling the questions. So like looking at any follow-up questions if they want. So the first question is kind of a general question. Why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities do you think you bring to this board? And also how will you ensure a level of respect and civility remains between the board members?
So why I want to be on the select board. You know, recently just looking at the, things in the Valley News, different articles about the towns in the area. It's you see, towns losing town managers, police chiefs, road crews. I came to the conclusion that I think that our local governments are in trouble, and that we need involvement to turn that around. I think that when you see that level of change, especially in a town like Norwich, where everybody is the smartest person in the room, having that level of transition really makes you think. So when you boil it down, I thought, well, somebody needs to do it, then why not me? I've have a banking finance background that goes back to 1984. I have very strong financial analysis skills. Seen a ton of financial statements. Know how to read a balance sheet, an income statement. I think that can benefit the board in budgeting. But I've also been very involved in the community. While I've only lived here since 2015, I've been a part of this community since really I moved up here in 93, first living in Quechee. I had family that was living here in town. I worked here in town. I've been a member of the Woodstock Rotary Club since 1996 or 1997. I've been on numerous boards, from the Thompson Senior Center. I'm the treasurer now of Merton's House. I was the past president of the Woodstock Chamber of Commerce. So I think I have a pretty good idea of the town. I know, a number of people here, not as many as some, but I feel I have a good knowledge of what's there. And I have a history of volunteering. And, you know, if you use the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work, I would probably consider myself in that 20%.
Thank you very much. Next, can you describe a time when you were in a leadership position and a difficult issue came up? And what was your role in bringing that to a mutual resolution between all parties?
So I had to think about this. So there's a couple of different instances that come to mind, and one is kind of a silly one, but as a member of Rotary, a couple of weeks ago we had our cookout. So happens that I'm the person that's in charge of the annual cookout that we do at Silver Lake. And we hired a local caterer. Years ago, we used to do all the food work ourselves. And just to make things easier, we hired a caterer, somebody very, you know, reputable. Lots of people know him. We were having lobster. The water did not boil until like 7:30. And we needed to be out of the park by 8 o'clock. So some people had eaten, but most people had not eaten. You know, we pulled the group together. I went and met with the people from the park to see if we can get a little extra time. Took responsibility for the issue, apologized to the 70 some odd people that were there, and said, hey, hate to do this to you. Got good news, got bad news. Good news, we got extra time. Bad news, we got to eat really fast and get out of here. And people did it. We got together. We put we got the place cleaned up. Left it in probably better shape than we found it, even though it was dark when we left. And I have not heard a complaint about it. I did apologize again to the club after, but when I thought about it in terms of this question, it was really being able to take responsibility for things that go bad, and not looking to blame somebody else. Wasn't the fault of the water or the fault of the propane. It was just one of those things, and somebody had to be able to step up and take the blame for what happened.
Thank you. By being on the board, you may be publicly criticized by your residents that you live with, maybe even friends of yours. How will you deal with criticism, and how will you handle those situations where you are being criticized publicly?
Yeah, I have pretty thick skin. I may afterwards, my wife may hear a different side of that, but for the most part, I have I've worked most of my career, except for the last 5 years or so. Most of my career has been working with the public, in the mortgage business. It's not all ticker tape parades. If anybody's applied for a mortgage, you know that there are ups and downs in the process, and sometimes it can get heated, and you just have to approach it as you are on the other side of the table. Even though I worked in a business that provided mortgages to people, I am also somebody who has had a mortgage. I have been somebody who's bought a house and has a looming purchase and sales date, and has sellers wanting to know certain things. So being able to put yourself into the other person's shoes, and I think provides perspective that helps to avoid that kind of stuff. Honest to goodness, I don't feel that I think I could make most situations lighter than they have to be. That's just my personality.
Thank you. The select board will advise and vote on FY25 budgets and every budget obviously going forward. What would be your budget priorities if you were on the board?
So if, I mean, I don't know what your feelings are on this, and I don't think you can do this with a whole budget, but, you know, having worked in, you know, banking for, you know, many decades, I'm used to doing annual budgets, and, you know, budgets tend to build on themselves. And I do like the concept of like zero-based budgeting. And I don't think that you need to do that for every, you know, paperclip and staple. But I do think that, you know, you could think about the items in the budget that take up you know, whether you're looking at a percentage of a whole or a percentage of a department, and to look at each of those things and to justify their existence from zero. Like, just because inflation is 10% doesn't mean you're going to take $1,000 and make it $1,100. Why is there $1,000 there to begin with? So I think, like I said, you can't. It would be an overwhelming process to do that for everything, but to look at a couple of, you know, key performance indicators and say from in those particular areas, you want to look at it from new. You were starting a brand new town. Would you have to do that? And how much would you have to spend on it? And not just build on what was there. I mean, as far as individual, you know, items, I would look to you and I would look to the department heads to tell us what is important and why it's important. You know, I think I certainly can. I live here. I know what our infrastructure issues are. I know what issues are relating to the town, but I'd like to hear it from the professionals as to why something is what it is, because they probably know it better than I do.
Finally, being on the board can change your life, and not in a good way. In the sense that there's at least 2 meetings a month, but in reality, it's probably closer to 3 or 4, especially during budget season. There's the expectation that you'll be more involved in community, going to other meetings, being out in public more often, and just then, as the board members can attest to, when you're a board member, people come up to you looking for help on numerous issues that they may not have, and then expect that's going to be fulfilled. So how will you deal with that kind of change in your life and the change in your role in Woodstock as a whole?
You know, everything is different, but it's the same. I mean, you know, I've been part of a lot of boards. I understand that the time commitment. 61 years old, so I can figure out, you know, how much time I have to allocate for, you know, for something. I work from home. I don't commute. My commute is going from my kitchen to my office. I leave the kitchen, walk into my office. My wife goes out the door, and I basically sit in my house, you know, at my desk most of the day. So I have the ability to, you know, if I need to get up and go do something, I could certainly do that. I mean, even now with, you know, being on the board of, you know, Merton's House, I could balance my role as treasurer with my job and, you know, do it at the same time. You know, working from home, I don't have a boss standing over my shoulder. Don't tell them this, but I do stuff for other things while I'm working from home. And I think I could, you know, fit this into my life without, you know, major conflict. My wife might feel differently, but you could ask her that later.
Does the board have any follow-up questions or anything they want more clarification on? Are you good? Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is Laura Howell. And I don't think I said this before, but the board did decide to send the questions to the applicants ahead of time this morning. And again, to try to be as fair as possible. Laura Powell did not get those questions because her email is KCO, not COM, which I made a mistake of. So she got the questions a little bit later than everyone else, but just want to put that out for the record so everyone knows. It was my fault.
Praise Eric. All good.
So we'll go through the same questions that we just had Richard ask. So why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities will you bring to this board? And how will you ensure a level of respect and civility remains throughout the board?
Sure. I know everyone at the table, but for those that maybe a few that don't know me, my name is Laura Powell. I'm currently the clerk of the Planning Commission here in Woodstock. And I want to join the select board because I want to become more directly involved with the decision-making processes in the town. Like everyone here, I imagine I care deeply about Woodstock and the many lives it touches. I want to ensure that Woodstock continues to be a wonderful place, not just for my kids to grow up, but also that it's hospitable to businesses and that it can sustain the livelihoods of those who live and work here. I really enjoy collaborating with town officials, staff, and community members in my work on the Planning Commission. I'm a doer, I'm a communicator, and I love to execute, and I'm skilled at distilling information so that it's easily accessible. In terms of the third question, which is about respect and civility, I think there's a lot of things that can help guide collaboration, but I like to think of 3 things specifically. One is assuming good intentions of everybody who's a part of the conversation. The second is acknowledging good faith efforts by those who have been trying to solve a problem. And the third, I think, is like the most difficult, and that is offering criticism with solutions in mind. So coming at a problem, if you don't agree with the person speaking, offering an alternative before you choose to speak. It's something that we've implemented on the Planning Commission. It's something I use to kind of like help rein in conversations in my professional work as well.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you were in a leadership position, a difficult issue came up? What was your role in bringing that issue to a mutual resolution among all parties?
Yes. So this is actually quite recent, and it wasn't necessarily a leadership position, but in the Planning Commission, as I'm sure you guys all are aware, zoning issues can be quite contentious. And I think it's about identifying the win-win. It's not necessarily a win-lose and finding, something that's mutually exclusive, but that there's a big gap between what both parties want and identifying that gap and living there. So we've been discussing bylaws for about a year now. And before the state issued their newest legislation, we've been going forth on one very specific detail, which is setbacks, which is like how far a property should be set back from the road. And a lot of times, as I'm sure you guys know with town ordinances, there's no discernible rhyme or reason why something was written this way, especially if you're 3 or 4 decades past when it was written. So when we were talking about this, it was very apparent that our conversations weren't going to achieve consensus. So my colleague and I suggested, why don't we just go do a site survey and actually see what it is in town and see what the setback is. And maybe we can bring some data into the conversation. And so when I was a million months pregnant, we walked from East End Park through the town and took a map and just labeled like, what's 5 feet, what's 10 feet, what's 20 feet. And it was great because then we were able to come back to the commission and say, like, here's the data we found. And it softens the conversation, right? To say like, oh, it actually wasn't what people on this side thought, and it wasn't what people on this side thought. It's like somewhere in the middle, and it reframes kind of the conversation. And so we could come to a number based on that. And I felt like that was a huge win for the group.
Thank you. By being a board member, you may be publicly criticized by the residents of Woodstock. Can you let us know how you deal with that criticism and how you handle those situations?
Sure. I think it's important to remember that we're all on the same team, including residents, and that all of us want what's best for Woodstock. It's just that we differ in maybe our approach and ideas about how to achieve that. I don't think it's personal. I think it's about the approach. It's a part of the job. And as some of you know, I've already gotten a lot of criticism for my work on the Planning Commission, so it's not new. I actually think one really good example of this in our community is John Spector. He does this really well. If you've seen his listserv post, he uses humor to kind of welcome the feedback that he knows is inevitable.
Thank you. This board will vote and advise on the FY 25 budget. What will be your budget priorities for the next year?
So from serving on the town manager selection committee, I know how important it is to have a balanced budget, and not just a balanced budget, but a thoroughly vetted budget. It was a huge priority in the hiring process, and I think it's important not to just ask and look at the next fiscal year, so fiscal year 25, but the next 5 years and say, will there be any kind of upcoming expenses that are outside of our normal pattern of spending? And how can we look at those strategically and identify, not only how we're going to pay and save for them, but consider any revenue opportunities or grant opportunities that are available. And I have experience writing grants, as well as fundraising for public causes, my work.
Thank you. And then, as you may know from being on the planning commission, being on a board, but especially this board, can impact your life, change your life. As I mentioned before, there can be anywhere between 2 to 4 or 5 special meetings a month. You can be asked to attend other meetings, be asked to be more publicly engaged, be on a subcommittee to look into an issue that report back to the board. So how do you deal with kind of that massive change potentially in your life by being a board member?
The time commitment, I don't think is right now all that different from the planning commission. We have 1 monthly meeting, but I work on 2 subcommittees there, so I devote 5 to 7 hours a week on that work currently. Whether it's finding data or tracking things down. So I'm also excited to attend and see what other committees are up to, and learn.
Thank you. Does the board have any follow-up questions or clarification on anything? No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think up next is Anne, and you're on Zoom. I think you're still on mute.
There I am.
You still feeling okay?
I'm still feeling okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So far, I don't know. I'm afraid to test myself, but because I've got to be around for all of the crew work and the people coming in and out of the house to try to fix for the flood. So these have been busy times. So far, so good. Thank you for.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for making the time. So I'll hop right into our question 1. Why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities will you bring to this board? And how will you help maintain a level of respect and civility among the board members?
Well, just listening to the first 2 people, sorry. Oh dear. Just listening to the first 2 people, I was enormously impressed and realized that I don't have those kinds of credentials. I've lived in Woodstock in one way or another since 1946. My whole family lives here, and I've been busy working on my documentary film business for the last 45 years and have pretty much worked alone. And so I don't have the experience that may be necessary. But what I do have is a great love for this town. And I feel as though I'm a good collaborator. I'm a good listener. And when I saw that you were asking for applicants, I thought, well, I've been here now for whatever, 1946 till now, and I've never done my time for a board of the town in any way. And I thought, well, this would be a chance now that I have a lot more time to volunteer for that. So what the qualities that I bring, I think, are that I'm flexible. I care about issues very deeply. And I think that I would be a good board member.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you were in a leadership position, an extremely difficult issue came up? What was your role?
Let me go back. I missed
yeah.
the civility one, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah. I care so deeply about civility. I'm committed to civility and more deeply than civility, but for a kind of coming together and healing the wounds of polarization that are so intense. And they're not intense in Woodstock, they're intense globally, but I imagine that you know, that we're in hard times for civility. And I am very interested in being, as much as I could be, a peacemaker, and also having some fun in doing this work.
Thank you. So next question, describe a time when you were in a leadership position, an extremely difficult issue came up. What was your role in bringing that issue to a mutual resolution among all parties?
Well, here again is a difficulty with that question, because I've worked alone. I haven't been in leadership positions. I was co-chair of the first board of Sustainable Woodstock, but I haven't worked in that way. What I know is that I can work in that way. I know that I can get, I mean, every one of us, whether we've been in leadership positions per se, have lived in a family and have lived in relationships and have friends. And the films I've done over the 45 years are all about conflict and resolution. So I feel as though, again, I'm going to have to keep saying this, and it may be a little lame, but what I bring is myself and an ability to work out conflict.
By being a board member of the select board, you may be publicly criticized by residents of Woodstock. Can you let us know how you deal with that criticism and how you handle that situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't like it, but on the other hand, I'm very interested in criticism, because I feel as though somebody may be onto something that I haven't become conscious of. So I would like to find out what that criticism is, and if possible, to speak to the critics and see if we could come to a deeper understanding that way.
Okay. Thank you. The select board will vote and advise on the FY25 budget. What would be your budget priorities?
Well, my budget priority and my priority for everything right now is climate change, and this new normal that I heard on the public news tonight. An author said, it's not a new normal, it's going to get worse. If it were a new normal, we could figure out how to deal with it. But I feel as though that everything is going to change. I know I'm sensitive to it now because we've been flooded out just now, but I feel as if, as we look around the world, in every country and everywhere, there are these disasters. And if they keep coming, I want to help figure out in my one little place, how do we make policy and use our resources to try to be a resilient community in the face of living right on this Ottauquechee River and all of the rainfall that's predicted. So that would be a big priority. I also had I have a documentary film company that I've had with my partner, John Ankley, for a long time. And our mission statement had to do with social, environmental, and economic justice. So I would love to see us really find a way to solve the housing issue. I would like to make sure everybody who works here can find a way to live here. I would like to participate with you in figuring out ways to relieve some of the anxiety and real suffering that goes on that will go on as times get harder.
Thank you. And lastly, I think especially for you, working alone for so long, being on this board can change your life. 2 to 5 meetings a month, being out in the public, people coming up to you, asking you to help on certain situations. So how do you think your life would change beyond this board, and how do you deal with that change?
Well, I have the time now. I'm working on small projects, but I've never had this much time in my life that I remember. And so what you spelled out didn't sound too intimidating to me. I'm a hard worker. So I think it would be a welcome change, because I would feel that I was stepping out of the basement edit room and moving into a place where I might make a contribution.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have any follow-up questions or clarifications they want? I don't know. Carrie, no? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I believe Ernesto. Everyone. Thank you for joining us. Same 5 questions to you. Why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities will you bring to the board? And how do you think you can ensure a level of respect and civility remains between the board members?
So I believe strongly in Vermont's tradition of volunteer government. That's one of the many reasons that my wife and I decided to make this place our home, and we have, since resolving to do so, I think done a fairly good job of that. And so I remain interested in participating in the leadership of the town insofar as the town has a use for me as a leader. As in terms of my quality, and I've always been a very civically engaged person. So to some extent, I don't know any other way to be in the world. In terms of my qualities, I'm 34 years old, I'm Hispanic, and I'm a relatively new member of this community. And I think that in those 3 respects, I'm distinct from everyone on the board such as it is now. And so I think those are 3 perspectives that I can offer that aren't currently represented, but are representative of a significant portion of the town's population. And in terms of how to maintain respect and civility on the board, I would do so the only way I know how, which is by being an example and conducting myself respectfully and civilly.
Thank you. Can you talk about a time when you were in a leadership position, a difficult issue came up? What was your role in bringing that issue to a mutual resolution among all parties?
Yeah, so I'm currently the vice president, previously president of the board of a large community center in Porter Square, Cambridge in Massachusetts. I'm currently vice president. As I onboard a new president, I'm transitioning the leadership of that place, and that's going well so far. It's a 45,000 square foot facility, and it's valued at about $15 million conservatively right now. And when I first joined that board, before I was ever an officer, a debate arose when I was a new director on that board, which was whether to sell the building. And the entire community broke down rapidly into 2 factions: the sell the building people and the keep the building people. The keep the building people saw the initiative to sell the facility as a money grab by those who were advocating for selling it. They saw, well, this we can make all this money, and we could imagine all the fun things that we could do with that kind of liquid cash. And the sell the building people, I later learned after going through the effort of communicating with them and understanding their perspective, were really advocating for selling the building because they felt like the leadership of the board at that time was in a place where it was unable to keep up with the demands of the facility, and saw the building as being on a bit of a downward slope, and thought it would be better to proactively sell the building from a place of strength and reimagine the organization and its facilities, rather than waiting to essentially have their hand forced and be forced to sell the building under less than ideal circumstances. As a new member of the board, I was not obviously a member of either camp. And so I occupied this sort of middle ground that enabled me to really speak openly and honestly with folks on both sides of the issue. And I was able to broker some understanding that both sides loved that building such as it was and wanted to preserve it, and had different opinions about what would be possible in the long term with what we had in terms of leadership and our business plan. So I was able to broker some kind of understanding there and begin moving us toward a place of cooperation, toward reimagining our business model, reimagining our governance. No good deed goes unpunished, so that eventually led to me becoming president of that board. But you know, I was really proud of what I was able to essentially broker at that time, especially as a new member. And I think I was able to do that in part because I was new. And so I didn't have some of the baggage that some of the other folks that were involved in the debate had.
Thank you. Being a member of the board, you can be or may be publicly criticized by the residents of Woodstock. How you deal with that criticism and how do you handle that as well?
Sure. So I would handle it the way that I handled criticism when I ran for select board. I think it was a year and a half ago now, thereabout, year and a half ago. About a year and a half ago, I ran for select board. And I was subject to a lot of criticism then, and I would handle it in the same way, which is that I would listen to it and take it into account, take it quite seriously, understand that folks who criticize do so from a place of some kind of meaningful concern, and it is usually rooted in some legitimate perspective. And so insofar as people are willing to be civil and respectful, going back to your first question, I'm really willing to engage in debate about that and take that criticism into account and really be reflective. And insofar as people are unwilling to be civil and respectful, I will politely ignore that kind of criticism and focus my energies on folks who are interested in having meaningful conversations.
Okay, thank you. This board will vote and advise on the next budget for the FY25 fiscal year. What would be your priorities in that budget?
Yeah. So I don't think it's a secret that we have some deferred maintenance in town that that we will be having to address. And I think with all the recent flooding that there's going to be a lot of discovery, and we will find new things that need to be addressed, as well as whether they are deferred maintenance issues or preventative measures that we can take. And so I think it's evident that, you know, trying to get ahead of some of these things should be a priority in the coming fiscal year.
And finally, being a member of this board can, you know, impact your life. We've said before, it could be anywhere between 2 to 5 meetings, depending on the month. Attendance at other meetings and other community events. How do you deal with that change of your life? And what would be your steps to kind of deal with that?
Sure. So my life has been in a state of transition for the better part of the last year. I got married in December and transitioned to a new job at Kimball Union Academy in Meriden, New Hampshire. So, you know, that has been an ongoing process, but my schedule has really stabilized. My commitments have sort of, my schedule has become more predictable. And moreover, knowing that this opportunity was available and making myself available for it if the town has interest in and use for me in this role. I consulted with my employer as well as my wife, more importantly, and got all of the necessary endorsements. So I'm confident that I can and will rearrange my priorities and my schedule as necessary to accommodate the demands of this role if there's a need to. And I'm ready to do that.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions, clarifications they want? No. Carrie? No?
I did that.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
And congratulations on getting married.
Thank you so much.
Greg?
Okay.
So your opinion on electric mowers, go. Just good. Why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities do you bring to this board? And how do you ensure a level of respect and civility remains in the board?
Well, being a business owner in the town, I think it's time maybe to get involved with more of what's going on. I've lived here most all my life. been through the whole school system. Um, being a business owner, I think I know some of what you have to go through, and working with people, I guess we figure it out. And, what was the last part?
In terms of respect and civility remains within the board.
Yeah, I mean, you work with people and to figure it out.
Perfect. Can you describe a time when you were in a leadership position, a difficult issue came up, and what was your role in kind of bringing that issue to a resolution?
Happens every day. Working with, having employees, there's always something going on. I guess the most recent would be working volunteer with the Long Hill Snowmobile Club. There's always property owners and problems that happen, and you have to go meet with the people and talk with them. Usually you get a resolution and you can go across their property. I got some people that I have to visit every year, which is kind of a pain, but that's what you gotta do. And some we've had to relocate. So for the most part, it works out, and you just gotta talk with people.
Being on the board, you may be publicly criticized by residents, neighbors, etc. How you deal with that criticism if that happened to you?
Well, it happens quite often. Sometimes you ignore it. Sometimes you learn from it, and it makes you stronger and makes you better person, as well as doing something that you don't do it again, depending on what the criticism is.
This board will vote and advise on the FY25 budget. What would be your budget priorities for that budget season?
I think infrastructure, our roads and drainage systems and so forth, especially after the rains we've just been through. But I mean, Irene has happened. I mean, I was here for the flood of '73. It's happening more often, so yes, there's something going on. Whether it be climate change or cycles that the weather goes through, I think we, need to focus on a lot more of our infrastructure. That's what I would be interested in.
Perfect. And last, be on the board, can have an impact in your life. As I said, the board has at least 2 meetings per month. One's right now during the day on Tuesdays. Other special meetings, people coming to you asking for advice, favors, help, etc. So how you deal with that kind of potential change in your life by being on the board?
Don't know, I haven't done it yet. How do you guys do it? You figure it out.
See all the smiles,
No, You figure it out, and overcome.
Thank you. Does the board have any follow-up questions or clarifications?
No.
Carrie?
Flood of '73, that was my first flood.
Mine too.
I always say first flood, All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Last up, we have Tom, and he's up on Zoom. Tom, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you all for your consideration and your
Okay.
time.
Thank you for making time. I know you're traveling, so we appreciate it.
Right.
So we'll start off, why do you want to be on the select board? What qualities will you bring to the board? And how will you help ensure a level of respect and civility remains with the board?
Great question. As I said in my original application, my concern facing Woodstock over the next 3 to 5 years are the major capital projects that are coming, whether it's the high school, the town hall theater, consideration, wastewater treatment facility, maybe the aqueduct. I think those are all very critical decisions, and we need public involvement. We need wise investigations and good leadership to make sure that we make correct decisions. I know there's a big potential for tax increases as a result, and we have to, again, make good decisions and then be able to justify and stick with that consideration. As it relates to background, I've had 45 years or more in industry, good business background, successful in getting things done, also working with others. Great experience with budgeting, finance, planning. I've also participated with many of the organizations. Actually, I've been here now 27 years in Woodstock, and I believe pretty much every year I've been here, I've been involved with on one board or another. I've been on the school board, I've been on the Thompson board, I've been on Pentangle, it's an Economic Development Commission, and most recently been very active with the Ottauquechee River Trail. In terms of making sure that there is civility, people have to maintain level heads, they have to be engaged, they have to be knowledgeable, and with that, also treat everyone with respect. We are all part of the same community that we love. And, you know, how can we, my objective would be to just be a participant and be respectful.
Thank you. Can you describe a time when you were in a leadership position, a difficult issue came up, and the role you played in bringing that issue to a mutual agreed resolution?
Most recently, at the Ottauquechee River Trail, we received funding to do a universal accessibility project. We had gone through the permitting process. We received the funds and we started construction. The project was called to a halt under questions of proper permitting and whether we were approaching things correctly. I met with all of the principals multiple times, did communication locally and with the state to make sure that we had the proper information needed and that we had the proper permits required. The permits were acceptable and all, and we were able to get them all. The construction has been restarted. The handicap ramp has been completed, as well as the hard pack for the trailhead. So we were able to come together to reach an agreement based on communication and facts, and we were able to proceed and complete.
Okay, thank you. As a board member, you may be publicly criticized by residents, friends, neighbors. How do you deal with that criticism and how would you handle it?
I've had a lot of experience with that. I tend to have my opinions. I hope that my opinions are based on good information and good fact, and that I'm comfortable with the decisions that I have made or we as a board has made. And so I will get criticism. Sometimes we can agree to disagree. I also very much do like criticism because we all can learn from it and understand the other person's perspective and maybe, in fact, change my opinion. So in that regard, I am flexible and willing to learn.
Okay. the board will vote and advise on the FY 25 budget. What would be your budget priorities for that budget process?
I love some of the answers that have already been given tonight. One of the things I will be honest and say that I haven't studied the budget. And so that would be task number one, is to get up close and personal with it. With that will come a series of questions, and maybe there's opportunities. Clearly, there are town needs. One thing that I am very much concerned with is the tax rate. I am very much a fiscal conservative. I want to be able to make sure that we spend the money that we have, and that we're not always just adding and adding and adding, because I worry about the affordability in Woodstock for our residents.
Thank you very much. Last question. How do you think your life may change by being on the board? Talking 2 to 5 meetings potentially, per month. Citizens come up to you asking for help, asking for advice. So how do you deal with those situations, and what would be your approach to that?
Actually, given some of the other board positions I've been on, it probably will be easier because I'm now retired. I retired 2 or 3 years ago, and other than the Ottauquechee River Trail, this would be my primary objective. I did talk to a couple of the select board members to understand the time commitment that they put in. I found their answers to be acceptable. And I did also talk with my wonderful wife and make sure that she was okay with me proceeding. And so in that regard, I would be committed, and I think the time spent would be valuable to help Woodstock.
Thank you very much. Does the board have any follow-up questions or clarification? Carrie? Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's going to happen next is the board will vote to go into executive session where they'll have a discussion about the applicants that just interviewed, the next steps forward. I would like to say that we'll come out of this in 5 minutes with a choice. That may not be what happens. And there may not be a choice tonight. I don't want to speak for what happens to the board. I don't have an answer for when the board will have an answer. We'll see what happens in executive session. But once we know, we'll know, obviously. With that said, I think we had a very diverse select of applicants. And again, I want to thank everyone for applying. I think if you're not the one chosen, it's not because you weren't qualified, it's because the board thought someone was better fit for the time being. With that said, whoever is selected will serve just until March, a town meeting when there'll be election. We have 6 applicants today. I would love if 6 people ran for board. That'd be a great conversation to have in the town. So I hope if you're not selected, you're not dismayed from continuing to be part of the conversation of Woodstock going forward. The more voices we have in the room, the better Woodstock will be for it. So please, if you're not the one selected, please don't stop coming for the meetings. We really need you to keep coming and giving your voice to us. So with that, the board wants.
Oh, Eric, could I?
Yep.
Are we expected to hang on now, or what is your guidance? One way or another, I'm sure you will notify us.
Yeah, we'll notify one way or the other. If you're not still here when the board comes back, we're not going to take the job away from anyone. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Discussion?
Second.
Nikki, if you could do a breakout room for me and Carrie, I can bring my laptop into the other room.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we want to go? We have to go into that room? Would it make sense to go into my office?
So you can't do that. From computer.
I don't know, let me grab them and ask them.
Okay.
So you worked in banking? No. I worked from the banking. Oh, okay, well, so you worked, when we. I was astonished by how badly organized the morning was. At least the company. I mean, to be fair, it was an online private fund, because we've never done this before. I've been thinking, called scope of that. It was like, don't you people? Like, they call up and say, oh, yeah, now we need to. It's like, why couldn't you do this? And then on the day
Nikki, can you hear us okay?
Yep, you can hear.
Every back?
Yes.
Okay, after, a spirited conversation, an executive session with the select board members, the board has decided they want a little more information from some of the applicants, and have tasked me, the municipal manager, to reach out to those applicants and get some more information, and report back to the select board, so they can make a more in-depth and, more, a decision based on more facts than they have right now. So in the next day or two, I'll be reaching out to those candidates that we're asking more information from, then reporting back to the select board, for a conversation Friday morning.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you.
To be so as special.
Yeah.